6,000 crosses, stretching for over 100 miles along the busiest highway in ancient Rome, each bearing a dying rebel. This was the Roman Republic's ultimate message of terror. But history often forgets that this empire-shaking nightmare didn't start with a grand political crusade. It started in a kitchen, with about 70 desperate men holding nothing but meat cleavers and cooking spits. The year is 73 BC. In the city of Capua, inside a high-walled school for gladiators, a Thracian prisoner named Spartacus is waiting to be sent to his death for Rome's amusement. But he refuses to die for sport. With 70-odd followers, he breaks into the school's kitchen, grabs whatever sharp iron they can find, fights past the guards, and flees into the wilderness of Mount Vesuvius, to the Roman Senate. This isn't a war, it's a minor policing issue. They send a small, poorly trained force under a commander named Claudius Glaber to block the only path down the mountain, intending to starve the rebels out. But Rome had made a fatal mistake. They underestimated the sheer scale of the rage they had built their empire upon. Italy was packed with millions of enslaved farmers, shepherds, and captured warriors, all treated as disposable tools. When Spartacus did the impossible, weaving ropes out of wild grapevines, rappelling down the sheer cliffs of Vesuvius on a foggy night, and wiping out the sleeping Roman camp from behind, it was a spark in a dry forest. Within months, a band of 70 gladiators swelled into an army of 70,000. Spartacus was now the leader of a massive multi-ethnic force. Beside him stood Crixus, a fierce Gallic gladiator. This army carried a fatal flaw from the very beginning. What did they actually want? Modern movies love to paint Spartacus as a freedom fighter trying to abolish slavery. But ancient sources tell us a different, much more human story. Spartacus likely knew they could never defeat the entire Roman Empire, according to the historian Plutarch. His dream was to march north, cross the Alps, and send everyone back to their homes in Thrace and Gaul. But his men, drunk on victories and loaded with plunder, refused to leave. They wanted revenge, and they wanted wealth. Under Crixus, a massive faction split from Spartacus, choosing to stay in southern Italy to pillage. They were swiftly cornered and wiped out by Roman legions. When Spartacus heard of Crixus's death, he reportedly forced 300 Roman prisoners to fight to the death as gladiators, turning Rome's favorite blood sport back on them. Now the Roman Senate was in sheer panic. They turned to the richest man in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus was ruthlessly efficient. When his first legions showed cowardice in battle, he revived an ancient, terrifying punishment: decimation. He lined up his own defeated soldiers and forced them to beat every 10th man to death with their bare hands. His message to his army was clear: fear me more than you fear the enemy. Crassus drove Spartacus all the way south to the very toe of Italy. Spartacus paid Cilician pirates to transport his remaining forces to Sicily, hoping to reignite the slave revolts there. But the pirates took the gold and sailed away, leaving the rebels stranded. Seizing the moment, Crassus pulled off a stunning engineering feat. He built a massive 37-mile wall and trench system right across the peninsula, locking Spartacus in a cage. Spartacus tried to negotiate, but Crassus ignored him. On a freezing, snowy night, Spartacus gathered his men, filled a section of the trench with dirt and snow, and desperately charged through the Roman lines. But the escape came at a high cost, and his army began to fracture yet again. In 71 BC, the final showdown took place near the Salaris River.
Knowing this was the end,
Spartacus drew his sword. He killed his own warhorse in front of his men. "If we win," he reportedly said, "I will have many horses. If we lose, I won't need one." He fought on foot, desperately trying to cut a path straight to Crassus. He slew 2 Roman centurions, but the Roman wall of shields closed in. Spartacus was surrounded, cut down, and died fighting. His body was so badly mangled that it was never found. The rebellion was crushed, But Crassus wanted to make sure no slave would ever dare to dream of freedom again. He took the 6,000 survivors and crucified them along the Appian Way. For years, travelers marching into Rome walked through a literal forest of agonizing death, a brutal reminder of the absolute power of the state. Spartacus wasn't a modern revolutionary trying to change the world. He was a man caught in a brutal system trying to survive, whose greatest struggle was keeping his own desperate followers united. Yet, his rebellion shook Rome's ruling class to its core. By proving that the Senate could not protect its own citizens without relying on ultra-wealthy warlords like Crassus and Pompey, Spartacus unwittingly accelerated the collapse of the Roman Republic itself. If you were in Spartacus's shoes, trapped at the foot of the Alps with thousands of men demanding plunder instead of freedom, would you have abandoned them to save yourself or stayed to fight a war you knew you couldn't win? Let me know in the comments.